What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and in this episode of the podcast, I want to discuss how your environment may be affecting your life as well as your health. Okay, this is something that I think is difficult to address in a lot of situations, because when we look at our environment and we look at our community, many times it's not of our own choosing, in that we have grown up there, we have our friend circles, and well, not of our choosing to a certain degree. We have our friend circles, we have the people that we meet on a day-to-day, and a lot of that is then, forms our view of reality. So in this podcast, I want to talk a small bit about how community has an impact, what a positive versus a negative environment can do for you, as well as, do you feel that it's important to change it? And is it something that you need to seriously think about going forward? Is it the best option for you? Okay. I want to do this because it's something that's cropped up a few times with people that I work with, because and a lot of the time it's actually in their job that they work in, that it's not the right job for them. They don't like it, and as a result, then they're getting different symptoms, pain, tightness. It's affecting their mental health, and it's affecting everything around them. So I want to put out this podcast just to cover a few things of, is your community affecting you, how your environment affects you, and then what you can do to improve it or how you can work on it. So to get started, or to jump into it, is your community affecting your life as well as your health? This is, as I said, it's a difficult one to address sometimes, because a lot of the time we don't want to assess our community. We don't want to change things because we're comfortable and we're in a nice, comfortable space. We're used to it. It's not even that it's that comfortable. It's just that we're used to it. We're familiar with it. And sometimes the enemy or the evil you know is better than the evil or enemy that you don't. So I think a lot of times people do get stuck in communities that are not good for their life and not good for their health. And I want to look at it on a meta level versus a micro level. Meta level meaning that obviously you know if you're in a certain community and that, let's say, focus more towards on like bad habits, drinking, alcohol. It could be that drugs are involved. It could be that every weekend you go out, you have to go on a hard session, and as a result, then you're finding that you're struggling for the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday after. Then the next week you start out again. But that's just one aspect of it. And that's on the meta. I think a lot of people, well, sometimes we don't notice it, but we're just familiar with it. We're just used to it. So we prefer not to think about it. And we get caught in negative feedback patterns. And we just often go with the flow because that's what we're used to. So the people around you make a huge difference to your life, as well as your health, as well as what you actually expect. And to look at this from a different side, I want to dig a small bit into pain and injuries, and how injuries in your immediate family, injuries in your friend group can affect you also and affect your perspective. And I was actually talking to a guy on the phone the other day, and we were talking about, he was asking me, is it genetics? Is it why he's getting, let's say, hamstring injuries a lot? Because a lot of his family also got them, cousins and that would have had hamstring injuries, or is it something else? And as we dug into it, from the sounds of it, like, genetics obviously can play a role, but he was basically explaining that those people never really took care of it either, that they didn't go through the rehab, they didn't really take care of their bodies, and as a result they were getting recurring injuries. So is that genetics, or is that just not taking care of yourself, or not following through with rehab? Because it's easy to think that it could be genetics when really it's more of a learned behavior. So back pain is a huge one. Now, that was talking about hamstrings, but back pain is a really, really big one. And if you have someone in your family who has debilitating non-specific back pain, you're going to be more prone to experience back pain. And this, especially if it's in your parents or your brother, your sister, your aunts, or your uncles. The reason being is that it's this idea of you learn to become more aware of your back, to become more afraid of your back, and you see how people react who have back pain, and then you start to pick up on their cues, and you start to pick up on their postures, and you start to pick up on their lifestyles. Now, when this happens, you will find that when you start to get, or when you become really, really aware of your back, you'll find that when little things happen or little changes in the health or your awareness of your back happen or occur, you will start to treat those as they are a lot more severe. And I had an interesting case actually where I was working with a young guy. He was 14 years old, and he was getting a lot of back pain. And the poor guy in school was having a tough time with the people around him. Really, really having a tough time with fitting into school, and like there was bullying in the background and that. And he was also at the same time working with a guy who was not in the family, but he was an older man who was an older farmer who was struggling with significant back pain at the time. And he was a bachelor, and there was it was back pain that had been going on for years, and it's just something that he had attributed to the work that he was doing. Now, when the young guy started to work with them, he started to pick up on these different behaviors and different habits, and little things started to come from, bending down, picking something up, and then standing up, and oh, my back, or oh, Jesus, and then oh, all these different noises is what I used to hear. And as I was chatting to him, and as I was kind of getting through the sessions with him and his parents, I was asking his parents, did they struggle with back pain? And they neither of them did. They had other problems at the time, but neither of them really struggled with back pain. And I was looking at, when I was chatting to him, we were kind of going through everything, and I found that what his behaviors were learned behaviors. They were things that he had picked up from the older guy, and then when things started to get tough at school as well, his back started to kick up because that was the place that was most sensitive. And it was a really, really interesting case because it was an eye-opening one that someone so young could pick up these behaviors. And how we kind of got to the bottom of it is the parents knew the guy that he was working with. They were chatting to him, and they noticed that a lot of his behaviors were the same. So we had to. It was a funny one, not a funny one, obviously, but it was one that we had to kind of try and make the child more aware of it. But we also had to work on all the other normal things like strength and mobility and all of those aspects. And then obviously the thing in school had to be addressed, but that wasn't from my situation. That was from the parents' situation. They had to look at that in a bit more detail. But it was a very apparent case of learned pain, or learned pain or learned condition, where he just picked it up off of somebody else, and then because of everything else that was going on, it really increased the pain that he was feeling. And to be honest, once we got on top of it, once we were able to work on it, build strength, build confidence in him and his body, that this started to disappear, started to go away. But we had to change those behaviors. We had to change the reactions of, oh, my back, oof, like watching all these different things when he was moving. These older sayings, we had to clear them up, because without clearing up that language, we weren't going to clear up the issue. So that's why I kind of went on a tangent there, because I wanted to talk about how it can become a learned issue as opposed to an actual condition. And it's difficult to figure these things out, because you obviously have to go into a lot of detail with clients and talk through them. But once you do figure out what the causes are, and once you do figure out what's contributing, it's a lot easier to change them then. Now, the same thing goes for like your friend. If your friend got a knee surgery because they had cartilage injury in the knee, and their knee was sore, and I've done a podcast on this before about how MRIs are not the best option in a lot of situations. Well, if your friend had a cartilage injury in his knee, and now your knee is sore, and now you have a cartilage injury in your knee, you'll feel that you'll have to go down the same route as what that person did, because that's what worked for them. When in a lot of situations, and as I talk about in that podcast, these issues are not structural issues, but there is beliefs been attached to these, I guess, structural issues, and then as a result, that's directing your treatment. And then a lot of the time people get surgery when they don't need it, and people stop sports when they don't need to because they're told something crazy like you have to get a knee replacement if you keep going shite like that. The other one would be like an ankle injury. If you I see this as well often with teams. If one guy gets an ankle injury and another guy gets an ankle injury, they'll return nearly at the exact same time. Obviously because of the rehab that they're doing. But if there's one guy who's motivated and is working on it, and the other guy then is following along, he'll return faster. But if the two of them are unmotivated, and the both of them are kind of just lackadaisical about it, you'll find that one will copy the other, and that it'll take weeks to get back. And they'll be always comparing to the other person who has it. So that can also be kind of a dodgy one as well, because you need to be aware that you need to, in that situation, when you're finding that it's a problem, you need to separate them so they're in their own rehab at different times. Now, that's your community. Community is huge. How is your environment then affecting you? And a community comes into this as well. But your environment, I think, is like a lot of the time let's take the west of Ireland, for example. That's more of your environment. It is the community, your friends and your family and all that, but it's the people that you meet outside of that, which I guess comes into community as well. But are you living in a positive or a negative environment? Are the people in your environment optimistic about the outcome of training in life, or are you optimistic about it? What you watch on TV, does that have a positive or negative connotation to it? Are the people around you and is your environment helpful or is it harmful? Do you live in a house or an apartment, or are you in a job that you really don't like? Is that affecting your pain levels? Is that affecting your motivation? Is that affecting your life goals? Are you a big thinker, but you're surrounded by people who don't think as big and would prefer to pull you back than to build you up? Or is it the opposite way around? Are you in an environment that everyone builds each other up and the negative people are pushed aside? Because I think this is huge. If you don't notice the negative influences in your life, it's really difficult to change it, but they can have a huge effect on your life. And a lot of the time when people get stuck in this negative mindset or negative mind frame, they pull other people in with them. And it's the same as someone who's extremely positive. They're infectious. They lift everyone up around them. Good leaders obviously come that way. But negative people are difficult to deal with. They're always kind of bringing everything down. And you'll find that if you're around them long enough, that you'll start to do that as well, because it is also infectious. Your motivation will drop. Your goals will change. You'll set smaller goals for yourself. And this is something, to be honest, it makes a huge difference to people you're around. When I moved away first to the States, it gave me a completely different perspective on what you need to focus on, or not what you need to focus on, but what you could focus on and what you could achieve. Then when I moved, I was living in Tenerife for a while. Same idea, just a different perspective. A siesta was involved, which I love. Nap in the midday is perfect. Different perspective again. If you went napping at home in Ireland every day from 1 till 2, it would be frowned upon in a lot of situations. Now when I came to Bali, that siesta style is kind of give or take. Like some people do, some people not, some people don't, because there's a working in the area that I live. Even though Bali is like tropical lifestyle, very relaxed environment, there's also a big work environment and nomad culture here. So it depends on what people you get stuck in, but there's a lot of people that are working crazy hours into the night because they're comparing themselves to other people around them. There's a lot of people out here doing very well, and then there's a lot of people masquerading and saying that they're doing very well when they're not really. So becoming aware of that, it was something that when I came out here first, it was like shiny object syndrome, where everything was great, everything looked perfect and all that. But then as I was staying here more, I was noticing in some friend groups everything was really good, but in other ones then people just kind of showed that things were good, but they weren't really that great. And I think that's a big issue with Instagram, is that if you look at Instagram, everyone is living their best life. You know, in a lot of situations, most people are just showing you how great they have it. And I see as well out here a lot that people post about how great they're having it when they're really not, when they're really struggling. And it's something that I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day. It's two ways. Are they posting like that because they want to remind themselves of how good it is? Or are they posting that because they think that the other people need to see or need to think that they're doing well, instead of just really trying to address the issues that they're struggling with and working on those? So environment has a huge effect on you, and the people around you have a huge effect on you, as we know. And it can have a huge impact on what you set for yourself in life and what you want to achieve in life, as well as how you react to different issues and obstacles that come up. So in two sides of it, in one side, as I was saying, your goals, your motivation, your discipline, all that. The other side of it is like how you react to an injury based off of things you've seen in the past. So important to address that, and important to get an understanding of that. I want you to think about your environment and your community right now. I want you to think about the people that are around you. So are they negative or are they positive? Do they build you up or pull you down? Is there one friend in your group that is a bit more negative and he's kind of pulling everyone back, but you're still hanging out with them because you've known him a long time? Is there somebody like that in your group? If there is, I'd limit exposure to them. I would, because it will have an effect on your mindset. And it's important to hang around with people who, I guess, are role models in a way, who all provide. I was actually talking to a mate about this the other day about providing value in a friendship, and a lot of people are looking at that in the wrong way. They're trying to get what they can, climb the social ladder, do stuff like that from it. But I mean is like, do you have friends that support you? Do you have friends that you're interested in? Do you have friends that have goals that are like big goals that are trying to achieve big things? Do you have friends that are in line with your goals and objectives? Because it's an interesting saying of, you are the sum of the 5 friends you hang around with most. So the people that you are in contact with most, you'll find that your personality will change to be like those people. So it's important to put yourself in an environment that's conducive to your goals. If you want to perform well, you need to hang out with other high performers. If you want to, and this sounds cutthroat in a lot of ways, in that, I've had that friend for years, but is that friend adding to your life, or are they taking from it? Because there's in a lot of situations, people are in friend groups that they don't want to be in anymore, but just because they're familiar with them and they've had them for a long time. So it's important to really assess that and see if it is in line with what you want to achieve. And I think knowing the lifestyle that you want to get to, or knowing the type of person that you want to be, is really helpful, because then it's easier to surround yourself with these type of people. And it may be that you need to just move from where you are. It may be that you need to move jobs, change jobs, move or change your location if possible. Just change the group you hang around with or that you meet more. If there's a really negative person, but you are good friends with them and you don't want to cut them off completely, you just reduce your exposure to them. Okay, sometimes you may have to address it, that they're negative, because if you don't become aware, if you're not addressing these negative and positive and negative influences in your life, it's difficult to make the change that you may want to make. So what I would say is, you want to remove the negative or reduce the negative, and you want to align with the positive as much as possible. But knowing what type of a lifestyle you want to live, knowing what type of a person you want to be, is really, really helpful with putting you in that position and really maximizing the chances that comes true. So a small bit of a different episode today, guys, but it's something that I wanted to talk about, because it does have an effect on everything. It has effect on your expected outcomes in rehab. It has an effect on your expected goals, what you should try to achieve. It has an outcome on your life, your mindset. Are you a happier person, or are you a negative person? Are you not so happy? It has a huge effect on your mental health. So first off, guys and girls, you have to become aware of it. Really, really try that. That's the point that I'm pushing, is just become aware of it first. You can look to change things in future, but just really think about it and become aware of who is affecting you, what is affecting you. Do you have to change certain things in your life to get where you want to be? But that's all I'm going to talk about today. If anyone has any questions on what I was talking about, or if anyone resonates with this, or even if you have any issues with it, send them on to me on Instagram. I look forward to chatting with you about it in more detail. It's a common issue that's rarely addressed, I find, because it's difficult to, in certain cases, you have to cut ties with people that you were long-term friends, because they're just taking away too much and they're having too much of an effect on your life. But that is everything for me today, guys. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love if you could post it on Instagram, on your story. I'd also love if you could follow me on YouTube and TikTok. I'm posting a lot more there, and that's Mobility Tutor on both. Also, I would really, really appreciate if you could send this to a friend, somebody who you feel could be stuck in the situation and needs help to get out of it. Sometimes it's a podcast like this, and this is what I'm hoping is that will help you to reassess and rethink what's going on in your life and what you need to change. And that's really the goal with this podcast. So yeah, I guess that's really it. Thank you so much for listening again, and I will chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.